program. There we go. Good evening and welcome to our program about the arts in St. Paul. We are so glad that you could join us. Tonight is going to be an hour of peace and joy and beauty as we hear from people in our city whose job it is to promote art, music, and community. They are going to lift us up. As always, we'd like to thank the Roseville and White Bear Lake Leagues for their support. Please check out Roseville's program on immigration. That will be on Tuesday, March 18th at 6:30 p.m. at the Ramsey County Library on Hamlin Avenue. And then we'd also like to thank Suburban Community Channels and the St. Paul Neighborhood Network for televising our programs. This slide instructs you on how to ask questions. Closed captioning is an awesome part of Zoom, but it can make mistakes from time to time. So you might want to have your phone available to snap shots of your screen during this talk. There might be some future events of or artworks that interest you. So once you start looking, you will realize that art is all around us in St. Paul. I happened to choose the coldest day of the year to drive around St. Paul and take pictures of whatever struck me as art. I'm just going to make sure that everyone can see my video okay. I'm going to put my presentation on slideshow. Sorry about that. Thanks, everyone. So it really was the coldest day, and I just started taking pictures of everything that I could see. So you will recognize this huge loon. I mean, this is 3-story high silver loon on the corner of Snelling and University Avenues, and that's by Allianz Field. That's a brand new sculpture. And then next to that, there are many of these electrical boxes that are covered with artistic coverings that just beautify a little corner instead of a gray box. You might have seen the Adirondack chair. That is in the that's in the North High Bridge Park on Smith Avenue, not far from United Hospital. And then just next to that is the one of the large sculptures on Marion Street, and that is just north of Highway 94 in the Western Sculpture Park. So beauty really is everywhere in St. Paul, and it enriches our lives. It's good to pay attention to who gets recognition in public works of art. And I think it's safe to say we've moved on from the dead white guy on a horse bronze sculptures now. But whether you're a sports person or not, Minnesota is the state of hockey. And the state's hockey team, the Minnesota Wild, play at the XL Center. And right downtown St. Paul, you can see this triumphant statue of Coach Herb Brooks, who coached the U.S. hockey team to a gold medal in the 1980 Olympics. But St. Paul is home to a lot of different communities. And I was just driving around and could not take my eyes off this gripping mural. This is on Victoria and Selby in St. Paul, on this woman who's gazing off into the distance. I don't know the story there. And then right next to it, I took a picture of some panels that are on the Science Museum on Kellogg Boulevard, inviting young boys and girls of color to see themselves in science. And it just, as I was looking at this, I just felt like the best of public art draws in everyone who sees it. It helps declare neighborhood flavor and pride, and it promotes positive images for all of us. What counts as art? I would like us to remember that literature is part of art, and we have a superb and thriving St. Paul writing community. We've got great independent bookstores throughout St. Paul, and they are all eager to go the extra mile to find titles for customers and to support local authors. So here's a little shout out to Sue and Patrick at Subtext Books downtown. They have been very supportive to the St. Paul League of Women Voters. And then close to Subtext, there is this beautiful little sign for a restaurant. And if you can see at the top, that white bulb is a vase of either tea or sake. And along there is a drip of the liquid, a long white line that's pouring into a cup at the very bottom with little Japanese flower blossoms. And, you know, there could have been just a sign for the restaurant, or there could be this beautiful little piece of art. And then next to it, surely buildings can count as art, and we are just blessed to have the gorgeous Landmark Center. This was built in 1902. It's now owned by Ramsey County, And in addition to being a stunning anchor for downtown, the building itself hosts concerts and plays and exhibits, public forums, any number of special events. And they've got a play this Friday. I urge you to look up their website and attend the play. And then the final shot is a trash can right in front of the Ordway. And if you look carefully, you can see the little outline of the city skyline. I mean, that could have just been a plain trash can. Couple more. Here's some mosaic murals outlining the Little Africa neighborhood in Snelling and University. There are several sculptures in that North Highbridge Park that caught my eye. And then we can't forget music and theater. We've got the Ordway, and the Ordway was built in 1985, and then its adjacent Ordway Concert Hall was built just 10 years ago. And between these two complexes, they serve 400,000 people a year with over 500 performances, and that's dance and Broadway shows and concerts and opera, you name it. And so women are getting honored in public art a little bit more. I think it's about time. After St. Paul gymnast Suni Lee thrilled the world with her outstanding medal wins at the World Championships and the 2020 and 2024 Olympics, a bust of her likeness was displayed at, this is Lake Phalen. She is definitely the pride of the East Side. Last slide, I promise. This is my last go round. But these are some murals that have popped up in the Cretan Vandalia area. And this is a very industrial area, train tracks, kind of gritty. And these murals have just brightened the space. I remain a little frightened of that silver thing. I'm not sure what is there, but I am not supposed to say anything about art that I don't understand. So there's that thing that's there too. So I could go on for days and days, but now let's introduce some of our speakers tonight so that we can talk about the organizations that they serve and things they can tell us about art in St. Paul. So we'll start with Katie Klein from the Jewish Community Center in St. Paul. In addition to housing a busy gym and pool, plus organizing children's programs, the Jewish Community Center has a robust cultural program open to the public, and Katie will tell us about that tonight. And then we did have another speaker from Walker West. I'll tell you a little bit about Walker West, but she was not able to join us tonight. And then our third speaker, our second speaker actually, is Mohamed Gawanme. And you can see from his bio here that he also has a strong interest in film, cinema, and he works as the director of Public Art St. Paul. And Mohamed is going to tell us about the work with Public Art St. Paul and some of the organizational things that they've done, the community events, and then the public art works of art that they have. So thank you both for coming tonight. And without further ado, I'm going to get started with Mohamed, and we'll go with your slides, and I'll turn my video off. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Can people see me and hear me? Hopefully so. My name is Mohamed Gawanme, President, though not sure what that entails, and Executive Director of Public Art St. Paul as of April of 2024. Pleased to be here. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of St. Paul for inviting me. And happy to connect and happy to talk about the work that we do. Let me give you a bit of a quick background to the foundation of our organization. Public Art St. Paul was founded in 1987 following citywide discussions activated by then Mayor George Latimer, who passed away in August, as you may know, and then CEO of St. Paul Companies, since renamed as Travelers, Robert Hoff. These discussions resulted in a recommendation to create a new public art model, one that entailed a private-public partnership that engaged sectors that owned public space in our city, not only the city of St. Paul, but also Ramsey County and the state of Minnesota. The rest is a rich and eventful history that I will describe to you, not so much by way of a chronological narrative, but by telling you about the work we do. So our raison d'être and the work, I suppose, the bedrock of our programming has to do with our consultancy to the city of St. Paul. We advise the mayor's office and the city's departments on integration of public art into development projects, roads, bridges, parks, walkways, underpasses, overpasses, whether it's new construction or reconstruction. We advise the city on how to integrate public art. And I'll say more about that in a moment. The second thing we do is two means of engaging, if you will, public a park named Western Sculpture Park on Marion Street, short drive, perhaps a walking distance from the state's capital. We do two things there. We steward the 19 or so sculptures that stand in the park, and we also activate the park with arts programming, especially workshops dedicated to youth. And the third thing we have done since 2023, is to organize and deliver an annual called the WACPA Triennial Art Festival. As a triennial, it happens every 3 years, the next installment being in 2026. Next slide, if I may. So even though we were founded to advise the city on how to integrate public art into development projects, construction projects, such consultancy was on a sort of case-by-case basis for the first 20 years or so of the organization's existence. And in around 2008, 2009, two things happened that greatly impacted our organization and how it moves in the world. The city of St. Paul passed the 1% for Art Ordinance, requiring all development projects to include in their planning a public art integration to the tune of 1% of the budget of a given development project. And with that ordinance, we no longer consulted on an ad hoc basis or a case-by-case basis, but instead did so systematically by requirement, as it were. And realizing that there was a lot more work for Public Art St. Paul to do in this capacity, a position was established. There was one that fell structurally within Public Art St. Paul's employee pool, but a position whose occupant served in City Hall. And that was quite even though the 1% for Art ordinance was nothing new to the United States, I think it was passed around the same time as Phoenix, the city artist position was original and arguably groundbreaking. And what it involved is sort of a recognition of the value of having an artist attend meetings that centered or tackled development projects from the get-go, so that the aforementioned integration of public art was not an afterthought, not something that would come in at the end, but something that would be conceived along with other facets of the construction project, whatever it was. And soon thereafter, I think perhaps in 2010 or so, city artist Marcus Young ideated, conceptualized what is arguably been the most successful public art project that Public Art St. Paul has undertaken, in partnership with the city, of course, and that's Sidewalk Poetry. I don't think that any of our art projects are more recognized than this, if for no other reason than its pervasiveness. I think there are at least 1,000, probably closer to 2,000 we're counting at the moment, stamps of poems throughout the 7 wards of the city of St. Paul. And I imagine if any of you took the time to stare down at the pavement as you walk the city, you likely would encounter one. This project is also unique in that it's ongoing and is supported by its own funding from the city seasonally. That is summer, late summer and early autumn, funding for a position of field coordinator of the sidewalk poetry, which I think speaks to the city of St. Paul's commitment to this project and their appreciation of its success. Next slide, kindly. Next slide. If I may, there we are. A successor to Marcus Young as city artist was Amanda Lovely. As Marcus, still quite active in the Twin Cities. And this is one of the projects that Amanda led. This is at Pedro Park, soon after it was slated, dedicated to become a public park. And in recognition that it would take years to reconstruct the park for the purpose, a sort of a temporary, by temporary I mean a several-year project, was undertaken by Amanda Lovely called Urban Flower Field. As you can see, it's involves a recreation, if you will, of the famed and influential Fibonacci sequence, visually there against the wall. And that's dated to 2014. Next slide, kindly. Perhaps even more influential, a project by Amanda Lovely was the Pop-Up Meeting, which is a curious case of a public art project that involves, whereby art meets civil survey, citizen survey, as it were. This project involved a cart that was transported to various parts of the city by Amanda and her assistant, whereby they would push the cart in a public space and invite people to come and sort of give their impression about the city and about life in the city, either by way of interview or by way of taking a survey or by way of reacting to or talking sort of producing sort of their own statements about their experience of art in the city. And what Amanda did was she collected responses, impressions, observations, and conveyed them to the city of St. Paul, thereby undertaking what would have been likely a sort of a citizen research survey project that would have cost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, to great effect. Next slide, please. And here's another project by Amanda Lovely, although in this case, one that involved other parties, including the University of Minnesota and multiple participants, including the current chair of the art department at the University of Minnesota, Christine Baumer, as well as Julie Bender and Colleen Stayshore. You may have seen these. They're called Pollinator Sky Rises. There are 3 of them. One at Lake Como, one at Lake Phelan, and one in sort of an area, I think, by Hamline University. And they were part and parcel of a project called Be Real, Be Everywhere. These serve as sort of art sculptures that double as bee colonies. And the purpose of which, of course, was to raise awareness about the value of bees in our ecology. Dating to 2017, this is. Next slide, please. And most recent among these notable projects was one undertaken by the city artist prior to the current. Aaron Dysart was his name. And this was his project called Dance Hall to Go, whereby during lockdown, COVID lockdown in 2021, whereby Aaron affixed a mirror ball, which is a sort of a common motif to his artworks, to the back of his truck and drove the truck to various senior homes in and around St. Paul, playing music on request. And of course, drawing the seniors out to enjoy the music in the fresh air within a healthy environment. Next slide, please. Okay, so that was the first thing we have done, and continue to do. In fact, we're currently advising on 5 development projects that the city of St. Paul is undertaking, including, most exciting to us, the urban plaza outside of our Osborne building in downtown St. Paul. The second thing, as I mentioned, that we do is to steward the sculptures in Western Sculpture Park and activate the park. I'm reluctant to ask you lot, maybe I'll get an impression later, about how many of you have been to Western Sculpture Park. And the reluctance stems from my experience of repeatedly, rarely encountering somebody who has been to the park. It's certainly a charge of mine and a priority of mine to draw attention to the park and increase its foot traffic. You see in the front there the red sculpture that Cheryl earlier alluded to by I believe Alexander. It's called Above by Alexander Lubin, I think. Next slide, please. This is possibly the of the sculptures in Western Sculpture Park, perhaps the one that belongs to the most renowned artist of all, Marc de Souviro. Sorry about the spelling there. Dating to 1992 is Grace Atois. Next slide, please. Oh, yes, of course. There we are. Solar-powered Peace Pole is the most recent and one of many sculptures, works of art at Western Sculpture Park created by local artists. In this case, the tandem of Geeta Gay and Anura Siasar, both local, adorned with statements of championing peace in multiple languages spoken by the residents of St. Paul. Next slide, please. And also by local artists currently living in Egan, Melvin Smith. This is Walking Warrior at Western Sculpture Park. Next slide, please. So in addition to stewarding these works of art, restoring them when necessary, keeping an eye on them, we also activate the park, as mentioned, particularly through a program that's long been supported by Capital Region Watershed District and Ecolab. The program is called Earth Lab. It's been around in one guise or another since 2009. In the early years, it was called SPIDER, and has since been named Earth Lab. It's a program that involves a series of workshops for youth, targeting especially youth living in the vicinity of the park, and centering on the intersection of ecology and artistic expression. We look forward to holding that again this year. Last year we held it. We had 4 workshops during the month of August, punctuated by a 5th separate workshop This year, we hope to expand the program to 2 months of July and August, hopefully, funding pending, of course. And in addition to Earth Lab, we participate in other activation, including with other organizations, festivals, concerts. We table there. I think we've even collaborated with the League of Women Voters at an event at Western Sculpture Park last autumn to encourage people to register to vote. Next slide, please. And the third thing we do, the certainly brainchild and opus, arguably, of my predecessor, Colleen Sheehy, is the WACPA Triennial Art Festival, founded or launched in 2023. WACPA is Dakota for river, and my interest is in rendering this festival into a platform for the empowerment of Indigenous artists, especially those from Minnesota or who trace their lineage to people who had once lived in the land since called Minnesota and had been forcibly expunged. It's also intended to draw attention to historical and contemporary concerns of the Indigenous people of this area. Next slide, please. The opening ceremony to the 2023 festival was in collaboration with a local organization called Oyate Hutain. It was a program called Flower Power that took place at Raspberry Park. You likely see the Hellmeyer Memorial Bandstand back there by not John Carpenter, one of my favorite directors. It's I think James Carpenter. And that's where the opening ceremony took place. Next slide, please. It featured over 30 works. This is the inaugural edition of WACPA, including Commune, again by Aaron Dysart here. You see. Next slide, please. And here's a work by Javier Tavera called The Evocation of Latin Dance. Probably the largest of the works. Next, please. Not only hard, but also not only material, as it were, but also immaterial in the manner of moving images. This was Kismet by Hotia, a very much featuring a Hmong personality with his family and a layer of multiple projections atop each other. Next slide, please. And certainly not last, but not without, indubitably not least, by local celebrity artist Chris Larson. This was the Residue of Labor, also a video work. So I hope that I've given you a sort of tentative summary of what it is that we do. And I thank you for your time. And certainly I'm happy and looking forward to engaging in a conversation with you soon.
So much, Mohanad. That was fascinating. And here, Katie has turned her camera on, so we'll go to Katie Klein and talk about the Jewish Community Center and the robust cultural program that is open to the public that Katie will tell us about now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Cheryl, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this conversation. And to Mohanad, I learned so much from your presentation. So thank you for sharing all of the good things that Public Art St. Paul is up to. I'm going to be more alert as I drive around the city in these next few weeks. Yes, so my name is Katie Klein, as Cheryl said. I am the Senior Director of Arts and Culture at the Jewish Community Center. Our St. Paul campus is located on the corner of St. Paul Avenue and West 7th Street. And we are a true community center in the sense that we are open to everyone in the community and really strive to present programs that center community. We do a lot of co-sponsorships and collaborations with organizations in St. Paul, and have a very strong focus on cultivating community through arts programming. What you're seeing here on the screen is a picture of our symphony orchestra. Cheryl happens to be a member of the orchestra. Our conductor here is Chi-Chi Bestman, who is just an incredible musician and conductor. The symphony orchestra at the JCC is the longest running community orchestra in the nation, approaching our 100th anniversary and going strong. As a matter of fact, we have a concert tomorrow evening at 7:30 p.m. at the JCC. All are welcome, and it is free to attend. So that's one example of classical music programming that we have at the J. Another one would be our Suzuki music program. The program is called Northern Lights. It is a very well-established Suzuki music instruction program for St. Paul children. Students in the program range in age from 2 to 18 years old. And just an incredible established Suzuki music instruction program that's been going on for close to 40 years now. So in fact, some of our symphony members started off in our Suzuki music program many years ago, and it's really cool to see that longevity. So yeah, go ahead and advance the slide, please, Cheryl. So this is a snapshot from our recent youth production of Frozen. Again, our youth theater program is very well established. In fact, I was participating in these youth plays as a youngster myself, so that goes to show how many years it's been going strong. We do 3 youth productions every year, incredible productions with beautiful sets and costumes, supported by great tech, an incredible directing team, and the kids are involved with every aspect of the production, from the ideation around set design to behind the scenes stage management, props creation, all of the things. We had 35 kids in the cast of Frozen, and it's just incredible to see these kids. They come from all over St. Paul. You don't have to be a member to be part of any of these arts programs. And yeah, just incredible to see them grow in community and creativity and confidence, from the very first audition to seeing them take their bows. It was just so gratifying to see. And so this was Frozen. Coming up next in our repertoire is Wizard of Oz. So if you happen to have a 3rd or 4th grader in your family, we are holding auditions on March 2nd. We don't cut all our cast in the show. So if you have someone with a theater bug, definitely send them our way for Wizard of Oz. And then go ahead and advance the slide, please, Cheryl. So this is our art gallery at our St. Paul JCC. We have a beautiful space that rotates every 1 to 2 months in exhibits. And if you're ever at the J, come on by and see what we're showcasing. We are really invested in the visual arts. This particular exhibit was created by members of the community. So it was the call was to submit artwork that people took photographs of things that were giving them hope. And sense of peace in the aftermath of October 7th. So again, many of our exhibits involve the community. We solicit art from community members as well as professional artists. We have a new exhibit coming up. Actually, I think it opens a week from now, featuring the ceramicist Phil Raskin. And he will be creating 100 handmade ceramic mugs. And community members are invited then to bring a mug from their personal collection and exchange it with one of Phil's mugs, and then they will leave their mug to display. And at the end of the day, we will have kind of a celebration of people's personal mugs and just that connection between something tactile, like a mug that you hold in your hand every day, and bringing all of those together in celebration of community and just the care that goes into creating those objects that we use every day. Next slide, please. So this is a slide from our show choir. So we have this really incredible show choir at the J, again, open to everyone. And as you can see from the picture, members of the show choir range in age from maybe 40, and I think our oldest member is 88 years old, and he was out there singing and dancing and having the time of his life. So it is so fun. We are doing Broadway tunes for our next session starting in late March, but they just get out there. They have the best time. Friends and family come to cheer them on. So again, it's just another celebration of community and art coming together. We also have, before we advance, we have another choir too called the Giving Voice Chorus. And that choir is specifically for people with dementia and their caregivers. And we have found that for them to come together and use songs, especially songs from the 40s, 50s, 60s, is such a catalyst for healing and joy that is sort of uniquely accessed through music. So those two choirs are very strong kind of anchors to our music programming, the show choir and then the Giving Voice Chorus. All right, thank you. Next slide. So this gentleman, this is Mark Levine. I selected this slide because he is playing here a violin that was from a Holocaust survivor. We have a program coming up late spring. It's a collaboration with many community organizations. St. Paul Chamber Orchestra will be playing as part of that program. So we have a collection of violins that were saved from the Holocaust, and were all of these instruments were played by people who died during the Holocaust. So we have the instruments connected to their personal stories of what happened to them. And then these instruments are going to be played by musicians across St. Paul, and this is coming in March of 2025, and just a very powerful program that again highlights the arts as a means for healing and resilience. Thank you. Next slide. So this gentleman is playing a tambourine here. This was part of our Bonashir Music Festival that took place last spring. We love our festivals at the J. So this was Bonus Shear translates to Let's Sing. So this was a whole series of musical events that invited community participation. So we would have a song leader and invite community members in to play instruments. We had klezmer jams and all kinds of musical jams, as well as sing-alongs and group sings. And so again, just another example of just forging community, forging joy, forging healing through music, through song. And the other festival that I do want to highlight is our film festival. So we last year was the 30th anniversary of our Jewish Film Festival, and I am in the midst of curation for next year's festival, which will be October 23rd through November 2nd. It's a 10-day celebration of film, many of which will be paired with other community organizations and events. So we're partnering with local museums, with other arts organizations, with cultural centers to bring a whole wide variety of films to the Twin Cities that would not have an audience otherwise, and bringing filmmakers and artists along with it to just celebrate the art of filmmaking. So yes, I hope you will keep your eyes open for that film festival late fall. And we do also have ongoing film programming too. We strive to do a monthly film, and those films always involve some kind of talk back, so that people have a chance to process in community. We feel at the J that art is meant to be talked about and kind of felt in your being. So not just a passive experience, but something that involves an interactive component as well. I think is my final slide, if I'm correct.
So thank
Cheryl.
you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Katie.
so that's kind of course, just a general summary.
I'm going to, at the risk of looking like an idiot later, I'm going to stop sharing so that the three of us can come on. Mohanad, you can turn your camera on too. And I have all sorts of questions from the audience that we can go over. Before we get to the questions from the audience, I just want to say I'm so sorry that Marie Flowers couldn't be here, but if I could give a shout out to Walker West, they are this fabulous community school. It's an academy. They call it a music academy rooted in the African American experience. And they've been a presence in the Rondo neighborhood for years, since 1988. And they were named because it was a Reverend Walker and Mr. West who started the music program. So they've had several different buildings in the they were in Selby Dale for a while, and now they're on Marshall in a brand new, fabulous building that's got state-of-the-art recording studio. They're going to be working with the High School for the Performing Arts that we highlighted a few months ago in our program, one of the St. Paul charter schools. So they're just a really fabulous asset and resource in St. Paul for music instruction, and they take all ages, but they have made their name with teaching kids how to play every instrument you can think of. So they do strings, they do jazz. Their youth jazz ensemble has gone national and won awards despite their very young age. So they're just a great thing. So thank you. Mohanad is here. And so let's take some of these questions, and you can both pipe in, you can both unmute if you like, and we'll just kind of go from here. There were a couple of questions about the artists themselves, and if you have any interaction with artists. I think this would be probably more for Mohanad, but maybe Katie, you do too. Do you have interactions with the artists, and how do you choose people for your program? Do they apply?
Yes, of course. In the case, it depends. I do interact with artists regularly. The type of interaction depends on the association. So, for example, in the case of the city artist who works as a consultant to various city departments, that's somebody that I've hired based on expertise and experience that I thought fitting. And I sort of I even though I am involved, I do tend to lend them the lead in such a capacity. And in terms of some of the other work we do, such as, for example, selecting teaching artists for our Earth Lab workshops in summer, or artists for commissioning by way of our WACPA triennial, I tend to be hands off in that regard, and leave it to the managers of the in the case of Earth Lab, the manager of that program, and in the case of the WACPA triennial, to the co-curators of that festival. I'm cautious not to behave as a curator in an executive director's clothing. And this is something I've noted quite pervasively, and it's something that I think, broadly speaking, is detrimental to the work of nonprofits, especially small nonprofits like our own. So despite my experience in curation for many years, I tend not to take on that role unless I absolutely have to.
Seems like you'll be meeting the ceramic artist.
Yeah, we certainly forge really close relationships with all of our artists. And as far as the curation piece or the selection piece, I mean, there's so many variables, as Mahanad said, it really, it varies a lot from project to project. Sometimes we may seek out a particular artist because they have expertise in the area, or they're aligned with the theme that we're exploring, or have deep experience within that theme. And sometimes we get an email or a proposal that comes through and that sparks something for us, and we move forward in that way. So I would encourage you, if you are an artist, don't hesitate to get your work out there and let people see it. I think you'd be really surprised by how open people are to conversations, to seeing your work, to connecting you with other artists in the community or other organizations. And not to be discouraged if it's not a fit. A lot of times it's not a personal or a reflection on your art, it's just the timing might not be right. But getting your work out there is just an important way to get connections and get connected to community members who can help amplify your work.
And there were quite a few questions about funding, because we know that federal funding might be cut. Everybody's on edge about this. The league is, our viewers are very civic minded, and we are very interested in, we will call some people. Okay. The people watching are going to call. So if you have any advice on specific asks or things that you think might be especially helpful for our state and local, our city council and our state senators and House of Representatives elected officials, if you would pipe up now and tell us if you found anything specifically appealing. We're always told stories are very helpful, like put a face to why we're asking you to do this thing. I don't know if there's any legislation. I mean, certainly the funding for the arts has been an amazingly important thing, wouldn't you say, Mahanad? And I've even walked around Como Park, and if you see that little green and blue sign that says, I can't even remember what is it, Minnesota Arts Project or something like that. Tell your elected officials, thank you for supporting this. Part of the city we live in is beautified because of these funds. Any comments on funding from either of you?
Happy to speak to the tumult last week relating to new executive orders relating to any National Endowment of the Arts grants. executive orders pertaining to DEI themed or propulsed programming, and language around gender ideology and probably the atypical of yours. I'm not sure what the language was of gender ideology. Public Art St. Paul was one of 20 Minnesota recipients, organizations that received the NEA grant that was announced near the outset of this year. And last year, there was a furore over reactions to the executive orders announced by the Trump administration. You may have caught wind of a couple of organizations that made it known that they would reject the funds. And we spent hours, talking, connecting with ACLU, connecting with board members, connecting with the WACPA curators, because the funding that we got was specifically designated for the WACPA triennial. But my eventual, I suppose, to some extent, a reprieve was availed by a district judge's stoppage to the executive order relating to DEI on Friday night, for the reasons that a number of us, my colleagues and I, had noted, which is unenforceability. Like, there's just, and I could go on, I could go off or go on, but I won't. Only to say that we're not surrendering. I mean, they'll have to come after us. We're a tree that bends and won't break. And these Trump administration gusts are not going to break this organization. We've been around long enough, and the administration is only going to be around for 4 years. We'll outlast them.
Did you get any funding from the state or are you all privately funded and just based on members? And
we do. We get substantial city and state funding. State funding primarily by way of the Minnesota State Arts Board, and then city funding in two manners, by way of grants and by way of direct contracts for the city artist position and the aforementioned sidewalk poetry field coordinator seasonal position. And are we concerned about that? Well, there is a special election coming up in March here that I think will be quite significant in that regard. But again, I don't want to dwell too much on this. Yeah. I think you folks are the experts.
Edie, do you have funding from state or federal funds, or are you privately funded with your? Does the gym membership keep the J afloat? That's how you keep going?
Well, I will say, I mean, primarily, we rely on memberships, endowments, support from community members for our funding. And I will say, I don't know of a single arts organization that's not seriously concerned about funding right now. So I urge listeners on this call to make your voice heard. The arts are not dispensable. They're not secondary. We need our poets. We need our musicians right now. These are our truth tellers that can bring forth what we need in this moment, which is people that, I mean, the art is, right? It's a way for us to show our power, and it's a way for us to heal, and it's a way for us to show what is real and what is true. And there was just an incredible editorial in the New York Times by M. Gesson highlighting how Ukraine has sustained itself by the poets and the musicians. And that's been like the driving motivator for to just inspire the will to keep going. And so we need this more than we have ever needed this. So please support your local arts organization, support your local artists who are feeling this moment really acutely. So support your artists, support your art organizations, and please show up by like show up to these events, right? Like if we're holding these events and people aren't showing up to support with their bodies, that's also hard for us. So even though, the nights can be cold and dreary, if you can, it's an expression of support just to be there, even if you don't have financial support. Just being there is important.
You were the perfect segue to the next slide. And so I'm going to do the perilous share screen. And let's see if I can do it correct. As Katie mentioned, we've got a JCC Symphony Orchestra that you could go to tomorrow. That's a concert at the St. Paul JCC at 7:30. There is a fabulous private group called the Grand Symphonic Winds, which rehearses at St. Thomas University under the direction of Dr. Matthew George. And this group performs 3 to 4 concerts a year. They'll be in Bloomington, but they perform in St. Paul also. And they are a very tight, very big, robust band filled with band instructors and almost really quality, professional quality musicians. Please go to our lovely Fine Arts Museum downtown St. Paul called the Minnesota Museum of American Art. Some of us from the league just visited that. Their current show is called When You're in the Mirror, but Kate Bean is their curator, and she's very interested in Native American art, and all of the pieces have some Minnesota connection, and it's beautiful. Free parking on Sundays. It's a gorgeous little gem of a place. Don't forget, we have the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. They rehearse and give concerts not just at the Ordway, but throughout the Twin Cities. They have a concert on March 1st. The Ordway also has a musical about 9/11, a plane that got diverted from landing and landed in Canada. And this little tiny town took all of them in and took care of them and nurtured them, called Come From Away. That's on until March 8th. And then don't forget Como Park and Como Conservatory, the beautiful bronze and Art Deco buildings, et cetera, are just fantastic. Heidi, can you advance the slide then? Unfortunately, I don't have the spokesperson for Walker West, but they do have this thing that they call the Rondo Community Music Series. And I have not been to one of these concerts, but I'm sure it's at their performance space on Marshall Avenue. March 1st and March 15th, as you can see, they've got 7 p.m. concerts. And then Katie gave a shout out to the 3rd and 4th graders watching. Get your audition hat ready, get those ruby slippers curled up. The Jays also got a creative writing workshop that does have a fee, but that would be a great thing for budding authors. And then the Jays also got a dance concert called From the Shang Highlanders on March 16th. Next slide. Don't forget our college campuses. They've all got fine arts buildings. They've got theaters. These students work really hard, and so they get professional and nationally known groups, but they also have spaces for the students to perform. And it's just, if they're getting their master's in fine arts, they're very enthusiastic and they would love to have an audience. At Hamlin, they've got a world music workshop series, evidently 5 of these concerts planned. This one on March 6th is Haitian dance and drumming at the Sundon Music Hall. And that same night, they've got a play by Edna St. Vincent Millay that's being performed by the students. And that would be in the Ann Simley Theater at Hamlin University. We've got O'Shaughnessy. The O'Shaughnessy Auditorium is a fabulous performance space. The Minnesota Philharmonic is performing on March 9th. March 14th is James Sewell Ballet. This may be one of their last. The dance companies are in big trouble financially, so if you can support them, that'd be great. And then next, I have 2 recent St. Paul Central High School graduates, and so I have a fondness for their cabaret and their band concerts. They'd have choir concerts. I didn't even have a chance to get to Humboldt or Harding or Johnson or Owl, but Highland Park High School's got a spring arts showcase on March 13th, and then St. Paul Central is combining with Concordia. We've got Concordia College right on 94 and Hamlin, and they're going to have a big band concert on March 6th. And then next, We have the most precious gem of Penumbra Theater. It is a remarkable space. It's handicap accessible, free parking, easy access, and they have unbelievably beautiful performances. And the play they have going right now until March 9th is Paradise Blue. Please support the Penumbra Theater. Palace Theater downtown's got, I would love to pretend that I know who Green Sky Bluegrass or Flip Turn with no capital letters is, but I don't, but they're going to be there. And then I learned while doing this talk about CLUES Latino Art Gallery. I had no idea it existed. CLUES stands for Comunidades Latinas Unidas en Servicio. And it's the only year-round Latino-focused art gallery in Minnesota. And they're open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. Right in the East 7th, right by Arcade and 7th on the Broad Springs of town. And then next slide. So let's get to the league programs. Please put March 25th down. We've got Dr. Mike Osterholm, who, of course, he became famous because he wrote the book saying, we're going to have a pandemic, people. And then we had a pandemic. But he is very forward thinking. And this conversation is not going to be dwelling on COVID, but rather what did we learn and what do we need to do now? It will be a fabulous presentation. So please come. We joke that it's going to be virtual. We're not going to do our first in-person program and have a super spreader event with the state's epidemiology guru, Dr. Osterholm. So that'll be remote. Earth Day will have a program somewhere around April 22nd. George Floyd's death was 5 years ago this May, and we're going to have a commemoration and a promise program on George Floyd. And then please mark June 9th. We've pushed it back because of Memorial Day, so we're going to be meeting at the Humanities Center for the League's annual meeting. We need all members to come to that. Next. We study issues, we take positions, we take action. Currently, the National League is studying the federal judiciary. And so all of the leagues are doing their part to study this issue. And your board is working very hard on this in a very time compressed manner. Next slide. And again, if you would like to become a member, we wouldn't turn you down. I'm sure that the JCC would take membership. I'm sure Mohanad would take any kind of warm publicity that you'd like to give to Public Art St. Paul. So a shameless plug for all of us. And next slide. And thank you. You make Minnesota shimmer. Our lives would be immeasurably worse without the artists who surround us, the writers, the musicians, the painters, the sculptors. Please support them. And thank you so much for coming tonight. And to our speakers, it was just a great pleasure to meet you. And I hope that you enjoyed yourself too. And I'm sure that our viewers did.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation.
Likewise.
Good night,
Thank you for
everyone.
having us. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Have a sweet night.